Is this some kind of joke? The prosecutor's voice cut through the quiet courtroom. It was sharp and full of anger. Contempt of court, and now stolen valor. Sir, do you know the trouble you are in? Larry Clark, 82 years old, stood in front of the tall oak judge's bench. His hands were loosely behind his back. He didn't flinch. His eyes were calm and fixed just past the judge. There was a quiet strength in him, a calm that filled the room. The prosecutor, Henderson, was young and sharply dressed, his polished shoes clicking as he moved. "Let the record show the defendant is not responding," he said. The air in the courtroom was heavy, smelling of old paper and cleaning chemicals. Larry had come in for a small traffic ticket, but somehow it had become a big public problem. Henderson seemed to enjoy trying to make the old man look guilty. "Your Honor," Henderson said, his voice full of pride, "we have a man here, Larry Clark, who not only ignores the law, but is trying to take honor that belongs to our nation's heroes." Larry stayed quiet. He had learned long ago that sometimes staying calm is the strongest thing you can do. Henderson pointed at Larry's worn denim jacket. On the lapel was a small old pin. "He is wearing a military decoration," Henderson said, "one he has no right to wear. This is an insult to the court and to everyone who served." Judge Davies, tired and experienced, looked at Larry. He saw a small, quiet man and a young prosecutor eager to make a name for himself. The easy choice would be to agree with Henderson. "Mr. Clark," the judge said, "do you have anything to say? Any proof that you earned the right to wear that pin?" Larry looked at the judge. "It was given to me," he said, soft but steady. Henderson laughed, short and sharp. "Given to you? That's the kind of vague story imposters use. They count on respect for age, respect for the uniform. I asked for his military papers. If he is a veteran, he will have them. If not, he is committing a crime." A murmur ran through the crowd. Stolen valor was serious. The bailiff, a large man with a thick mustache, stepped closer to Larry. "I don't carry it with me," Larry said. Henderson sneered. "Old man, you are in serious trouble. People go to jail for this. You are disrespecting men who died for this country. For what? A free coffee? A moment of pride?" Larry stayed calm, but his mind drifted. He wasn't seeing Henderson or the judge. He saw the pin, and suddenly he was back in the jungle. The lights became sunlight over wet rice fields. The smell of disinfectant changed to mud, gunpowder, and fear. Henderson's shoes became gunfire. The judge's bench turned into a hill, Hill 742. Larry carried his pack and rifle, feeling the fear and brotherhood of battle. A young soldier pressed a metal pin into his hand. "You take it, Sarge," the boy said, shaking. "You saved us." Larry felt the memory like it was real. For a moment he was 19 again, fighting, sweating, protecting his men. Then he was back in the courtroom. Sarah Jensen, a young law student in the back, noticed everything. The pin, the calm, the strength. Her grandfather had one like it, a symbol of bravery. She knew Larry was telling the truth and had to act. She slipped out of her seat and moved quickly down the aisle. In the hallway, she pulled out her phone and dialed the number her grandfather had given her. "Only call if you see something no one else can fix," he had said. The phone rang twice. "Yes?" a rough voice answered. "Sir, this is Sarah Jensen. My grandfather is Colonel Robert Jensen. I'm at the courthouse. Larry Clark is being accused of stolen valor. They are trying to arrest him." There was a pause. Then the voice said sharply, "Keep them there. Do not let them take him out. Help is on the way." Sarah felt a wave of relief. Inside, Henderson continued, unaware of what was coming. "Your Honor, let's finish this. He is disrespecting the heroes. Remand him immediately." Judge Davies raised the gavel. Then the doors of the courtroom burst open. The courtroom was tense, filled with the quiet hum of people shifting in their seats. Henderson was ready to strike, confident the gavel would fall and Larry would be punished. "Your Honor, we cannot allow this man to dishonor our veterans. I ask for his immediate remand." Judge Davies raised the gavel, about to bring it down. The room fell silent, every eye on the old man. Larry stood quietly, calm as ever, his hands folded behind his back. The small pin on his jacket glinted faintly in the light. Suddenly, the heavy doors at the back of the courtroom burst open. Everyone froze. The sound echoed like a gunshot. Through the doorway came two state troopers, perfectly uniformed and serious. Behind them, 12 soldiers in dress uniforms marched in, each step precise and sharp. The crowd gasped. Their boots hit the floor in perfect rhythm, creating a sound that filled the courtroom with power. The soldiers formed two lines, leaving a path from the doors to the defendant's table. At the end of the lines, a tall man walked forward, his two silver stars shining on his shoulders. His presence commanded attention. Major General Marcus Thorne. The room went completely silent. Henderson froze, his mouth open. Judge Davies lowered the gavel, his eyes wide in shock. The young law student, Sarah, felt her heart pound. General Thorne stopped in front of Larry. For a long moment, they simply looked at each other, two old soldiers sharing a silent understanding. Then the general snapped to attention. His voice filled the courtroom. "Sergeant Major Clark, it is an honor to see you, sir." The soldiers saluted together, their precision perfect. The sound echoed in the courtroom, making Henderson step back slightly, unsure what to do. The general's voice was steady but powerful. "Your Honor, you have before you a man who earned the Distinguished Service Cross, the Silver Star with 2 oak leaf clusters, the Bronze Star for Valor, and 4 Purple Hearts. This man, Sergeant Major Larry Clark, is a living hero. He held his company against a battalion on Hill 742 for 17 hours. The pin he wears is not a trinket. It is the Silver Star, awarded for saving lives and showing extraordinary courage." A murmur ran through the crowd. People stood, craning to see Larry, the unassuming old man who suddenly felt larger than life. Henderson's face went pale. He could not speak. Larry felt the courtroom fade again, replaced by the jungle. He remembered the young medic, Miller, badly injured and scared. Larry had crawled through gunfire, shielding him while stopping his bleeding. The boy had pressed the Silver Star into his hand, whispering, "You deserve this more than me." The memory was heavy with grief and pride. Larry had kept the medal for 50 years, not as a trophy, but as a reminder of courage, promise, and sacrifice. Back in the courtroom, General Thorne turned to Henderson. His eyes blazed. "You accuse this man of stealing valor. You who have never known real sacrifice, never lost a brother in battle. You are wrong. You brought shame to this courthouse." He then faced Larry. "Sergeant Major, I apologize for the disturbance. We came as soon as we could." Larry nodded calmly. "It's all right, Marcus. They didn't know." Judge Davies looked small behind his bench, humbled by the power of the moment. The young law student, Sarah, wiped a tear from her eye, overwhelmed by the truth she had witnessed. The courtroom was quiet, filled only with the sense of respect and awe. The charges against Larry were dismissed. Henderson was suspended, and a public apology was issued to Larry Clark. The courtroom slowly returned to normal, though no one could shake the weight of what had just happened. People whispered, craning their necks to get another look at Larry Clark. The young law student, Sarah Jensen, stayed near the back, feeling a mixture of relief and awe. She had helped set in motion a truth that needed to be heard. Judge Davies cleared his throat, finally breaking the silence. "The charges against Mr. Clark are dismissed. The court extends its apologies for any distress caused." His voice trembled slightly, a mixture of exhaustion and humility. Henderson, pale and shaken, barely whispered, I'm sorry, Your Honor." He didn't know where to look. His confidence shattered. The room was quiet, the tension slowly fading into a mix of astonishment and respect. Outside the courthouse, word of what had happened spread fast. Reporters called for interviews, cameras snapped pictures, and the story quickly reached local news channels. Larry Clark, who had lived most of his life quietly, was suddenly a figure of admiration and respect. People began to understand that heroism was not always loud or celebrated. Sometimes it was quiet, unnoticed, and carried with dignity. Larry left the courtroom slowly, supported by memories and honor rather than fear. He moved carefully through the halls, nodding at the soldiers who had accompanied him. The world seemed different now, not because it had changed, but because he had been reminded of the impact of truth and integrity. 2 weeks later, the governor issued a formal apology to Larry. The state also implemented a training program for all prosecutors and judges, focusing on understanding and respecting military service. Larry received letters and messages from strangers, thanking him for his service and for showing the world what courage truly looked like. One quiet morning, Larry sat at his favorite diner, the one by the window where he always ordered black coffee. The sun was bright, spilling warmth across the small booth. He was alone for a moment, enjoying the simple peace of the morning. The door opened and Henderson stepped in. His head was down and he looked nervous. Larry didn't flinch. He simply nodded toward the empty seat across from him. "Mr. Clark," Henderson began softly, "may I sit?" Larry gestured to the seat. Henderson slid in. For a long time he just stared at his hands, unable to speak. Finally he said, "I came to apologize. I was wrong. I didn't see you as a person. I only saw a case. I was trying to win, not to seek truth. I will never forget the lesson you and General Thorne taught me." Larry took a slow sip of coffee. "Everyone makes mistakes," he said calmly. "What matters is what you do afterward. You learn, you grow, and you try to be better. That's all any of us can do." Henderson nodded, a single tear sliding down his cheek. He stood, shook Larry's hand, and walked out. Larry watched him go, the morning sun warm on his face. A quiet hero in a world that, for a brief moment, had remembered what true courage looked like. Sarah Jensen, observing from a nearby table, smiled. She had played her part, but it was Larry who taught the room the meaning of honor, bravery, and humility. She would never forget the sight of an old man standing tall, calm, and proud in the face of misunderstanding and judgment. For Larry, the small silver pin on his jacket was more than a medal. It was a memory, a promise, and a story of courage and sacrifice that spanned decades. It reminded him of friends lost, battles fought, and promises kept. And in the quiet moments, over a simple cup of black coffee, he knew he had lived a life worthy of the valor it represented. People would tell this story for years. It wasn't just about medals or recognition. It was about the quiet strength of a man who had faced fear, danger, and loss, yet carried himself with dignity, humility, and honor. And in that dignity, Larry Clark had shown the world the real meaning of heroism. The courtroom was empty now, save for a few lingering officers and the judge, still absorbing the events of the morning. Larry Clark walked slowly down the steps, his worn shoes echoing faintly in the marble halls. Outside, the air was fresh, carrying the smell of autumn leaves and sunlight. He paused for a moment, letting the world settle around him. For Larry, it wasn't just relief. It was a quiet reminder of the battles he had fought long ago. He ran a hand over the small silver pin on his jacket. The memory of the young medic, Miller, pressing the silver star into his hand, returned with vivid clarity. The boy had been terrified, bleeding, but alive because Larry had acted without thinking of his own safety. The pin was more than recognition. It was a story, a promise to a fallen comrade to live a life worthy of his courage. He had carried that promise for over 50 years, not as a badge of honor for himself, but as a living memory of sacrifice, friendship, and duty. He remembered the chaos of Hill 742, the heat, the mud, the roar of artillery, the cries of soldiers around him. The air had been thick with smoke and fear, every moment a test of courage and endurance. Yet amidst all the terror, there had been moments of hope and humanity, a shared cigarette in a rainstorm, a whispered joke to calm nerves, a hand gripping his shoulder in reassurance. These memories were his true decorations, not the medals pinned to his chest. The world outside the courthouse seemed almost surreal now, peaceful compared to those long-ago jungles. Children played on the sidewalks. Cars hummed past, and the smell of coffee from nearby cafes mingled with the crisp morning air. Larry watched, thinking about how life moved on, how ordinary days could feel extraordinary when they were survived, cherished, or shared with others. He walked to his favorite diner, the same place where he often sat alone with his black coffee. The waitress smiled at him, recognizing the quiet man who had become something of a local legend. "Morning, Larry," she said softly, placing a steaming cup in front of him without waiting for an order. He nodded in thanks, taking a slow sip, savoring the warmth and bitterness. Across town, Henderson sat at his small apartment, replaying the courtroom in his mind. The young prosecutor had come seeking victory, but he had been humbled by truth and history. He hadn't just made a mistake. He had underestimated the weight of real courage. The image of Larry Clark standing calm, unshaken, had seared itself into his memory. Henderson knew he had been given a lesson he would never forget, that real heroes did not need validation, and arrogance could blind even the most confident. Meanwhile, Sarah Jensen was at the law school library, her notebook open but untouched. She couldn't stop thinking about Larry, the dignity in his silence, the weight of his memories. She had been a witness to history, and more than that, she had acted, connecting the dots when no one else would. The responsibility and pride weighed on her, a reminder that courage sometimes comes in quiet, unseen forms. That afternoon, a small gathering was held at the courthouse. The governor, local officials, and members of the public came to honor Larry Clark formally. A ceremony was held where he was presented with letters of recognition and gratitude, though Larry accepted them with the same quiet demeanor he had shown in the courtroom. He smiled gently, shaking hands with veterans and civilians alike, each interaction a small acknowledgement of shared respect. The event was covered in local newspapers and online platforms. Stories about the courtroom confrontation, the honor guard, and the young woman who had helped intervene spread quickly. People were inspired, not by drama or spectacle, but by the simple truth. One man's courage and decades of quiet heroism could not be diminished by misunderstanding or arrogance. That evening, Larry returned to his small apartment. The silver pin glinted softly in the lamplight, a reminder that the past and present often coexist. He thought of the friends he had lost, of battles survived, of promises kept. He thought of Miller, of the men who had fought beside him, and of the quiet lessons of life that come only with age and experience. For Larry, heroism was not in recognition or fame, but in action, in sacrifice, and in the integrity to carry truth forward. And now the world had caught a glimpse of that, if only briefly. Weeks passed, but the lessons lingered. Henderson completed his suspension, returning to work humbled, changed. He approached law with a new perspective, one shaped not by ambition or arrogance, but by respect and understanding. He often reflected on Larry's calm, steady gaze and the quiet power of truth. Sarah Jensen continued her studies, inspired to advocate for justice with integrity. She kept in touch with Larry, sending letters and occasional visits, learning from his stories and perspectives. He shared tales not to boast, but to teach, lessons in courage, patience, and honor that could not be written in textbooks. Larry's life returned to its simple rhythms: coffee in the morning, walks in the park, quiet evenings with memories that stretched decades back. Yet he carried a renewed sense of purpose. His story was no longer just his. It had become a lesson for others, a reminder that honor and bravery do not always scream for attention, but speak quietly through actions and deeds. One sunny afternoon, Sarah visited the diner. She found Larry reading a newspaper, the silver pin catching the sunlight. She smiled. "Good morning, Mr. Clark," she said softly. Larry looked up, his eyes calm and steady. "Morning, Sarah," he replied, a small smile forming. "Life keeps moving. That's a good thing. Keeps us honest." Sarah sat down, watching the quiet hero who had changed more than just a courtroom that day. "I think everyone should know your story," she said. Larry chuckled lightly. "Maybe they will. Maybe it's already spreading." He paused, looking out the window. "But remember this. The story isn't about me. It's about what we all can do when we act with courage, even when no one is watching." As they talked, the world moved around them, unaware that they were in the presence of a living legend. Larry Clark, the quiet hero, had taught them all a lesson in valor, humility, and truth. And as the sun streamed through the diner window, glinting off the small silver pin, it was clear: some stories are timeless, some heroes are quiet, but their impact, that lasts forever.